Darkness by Lord Byron. I had a dream, which was not at all a dream. The bright sun was extinguished, and the stars did wander darkling in the eternal space, rayless and pathless, and the icy earth swung blind and blackening in the moonless air. Morn came and went and came, and brought no day, and men forgot their passions in the dread of the desolation, and all hearts were chilled into a selfish prayer for light. And they did live by watchfires, and the thrones, the palaces of crowned kings, the huts, the habitations of all things which dwell, were burned for beacons. Cities were consumed, and men were gathered round their blazing homes to look once more into each other's face. Happy were those who dwelt within the eye of the volcanoes and the mountain torch. A fearful hope was all the world contained. Forests were set on fire, but hour by hour they fell and faded, and the crackling trunks extinguished with a crash, and all was black. The brows of men by the despairing light wore an unearthly aspect, as by fits the flashes fell upon them. Some lay down and hid their eyes and wept, and some did rest their chins upon their clenched hands and smiled, and others hurried to and fro and fed their funeral piles with fuel, and looked up with mad disquietude on the dull sky, the pall of the past world, and then again with curses cast them down upon the dust, and gnashed their teeth and howled. The wild birds shrieked, and terrified did flutter on the ground, and flapped their useless wings. The wildest brutes came tame and tremulous, and vipers crawled and twined themselves among the multitude. Hissing, but stingless, they were slain for food. And war, which for a moment was no more, did glut himself again. A meal was brought, with blood, and each sate sullenly apart, gorging himself in a gloom. No love was left. All earth was but one thought, and that was death, immediate and inglorious, and the pang of famine fed upon all entrails. Men died, and their bones were tombless as their flesh. The meagre by the meagre were devoured, even dogs assailed their masters, all save one, and he was faithful to a corpse, and kept the birds and beasts and famished men at bay, till hunger clung them, or the dropping dead lured their lank jaws. Himself sought out no food, but with a piteous and perpetual moan, and a quick desolate cry, licking the hand which answered not with a caress, he died. The cross was famished by decrees, but two of an enormous city did survive, and they were enemies. They met beside the dying embers of an altar place, where had been heaped a mass of holy things. From an unholy usage they recked up, and shivering scraped with their cold skeleton hands the feeble ashes and their feeble breath. Blew for a little life and made a flame, which was a mockery. Then they lifted up their eyes as it grew lighter, and each other's aspect saw, and shrieked and died. Beheld even of their mutual hideousness, they died, unknowing who he was upon whose brow famine had written fiend. The world was void. The populace and the powerful was a lump, seasonless, herbless, treeless, manless, lifeless, a lump of death, a chaos of hard clay. The rivers, lakes, and oceans stood still, and nothing stirred within their silent depths. Ships sailless lay rotting on the sea, and their masts fouled down piecemeal as they dropped. They slept on the abyss without a surge. The waves were dead. The tides were in their grave. The moon, their mistress, had expired before. The winds were withered in the stagnant air, and the clouds perished. Darkness had no need of aid from them. She was the universe. That was George Gordon, Lord Byron's poem, Darkness, and that's a really interesting poem. I really like that because it's very ahead of its time, very futuristic, and it reminded me a bit of My Dead City, actually. But what I liked about it was the layout. You know, I get on this right buzz, and you get this a lot from people who think that poetry must have be a certain form. It must be 6 lines, 4 lines, or you know, it has to rhyme, or it's not poetry. And there you go. I couldn't find the rhyme. I looked at that several times and read it several times because my computer failed to try and find where the rhyme was in that. And there are bits that do rhyme, but most of it's lyrical. And so that goes to prove this is Lord Byron, who is a very famous poet. So if he doesn't have to rhyme, and it's called poetry, which it is, so therefore you don't have to rhyme to be poetry, and there's lots of others that don't. But also what interests me is that there was a lot of people that talk about the way I write poems, and I have no, you know, I just write them. I've never learned or anything like that. I just write, and I read them out better than I write them, actually. But I don't have a structure. You know, some people think that it should only have 14 lines, or you should have like 6 lines and then 6 lines and whatever. Mine are not like that. If you've ever seen them written, or if you see them on writebuzz.com, if you'll see them there on that competition on First Chapters, you'll notice that, you know, you might have you know, this much, and then like this much, and then this much, or whatever. Sometimes there's no gaps in them at all. They're just one, you know, it goes down. And people don't like that because they want form. They want it to be, you know, it has to have like, you know, it has to be split up into equal stanzas. But it doesn't, because when I look for this Byron poem, and there's 2 different ways it's written. One, it's written like this, where it's got like, I'll just try and describe you. It's got 2 stanzas only, Darkness. The first stanza is about that long, yeah? And the second stanza is only about that long. So there you go. Unless there is some kind of form for that, you know, that you've got 24 and then 12 lines or something. I don't know, it's probably more than that, but what I'm saying is I don't think. And other places where I searched for it to find that poem, it was just one long, no gaps at all. It was just one long stanza. So there you go. And the thing, because, you know, he was a maverick anyway, and most poets are mavericks, or they're, you know, non-conformists. And the whole point, you know, people talking about you had a grammar and things like that, but poetry doesn't have grammar, because when do you ever see full stops in this poem? You know, it's got full stop sometimes. You know, like every single line of a poem will be a capital. You know, even if there isn't a full stop before it, that's not grammatically correct. Because if you're going to have a new line, it has to have a full stop at the end of the previous line, and then you can have a capital. But poetry doesn't do that. You'll have lines where, you know, you might have no grammar in it, no commas, no full stops at all, and you'll just have capitals at each line. Will start with a capital. You know, so all these people that say that, you know, poetry's got to have grammar, it's got to have form, it's got to have rhymes, bullshit. Sorry, excuse my French there. And if you don't believe me, look at Byron, look at other famous poets as well. Anyway, I really like that poem, Darkness, by George Gordon, Lord Byron. Anyway, take care, take it easy, God bless, and peace.